Hello there, welcome back. This is my big video for the week. This is the vampire movies video. This is a response. Saoirse Ronan did a vampire top 10 plus honorable mentions. So I said I'd do a response to it. Response basically means I'll just talk about vampire movies. But I don't want to do a top 10. I don't like doing top 10s because I would stretch it up to be like top 50 or something pretty quickly. And I'd rather just talk about certain types of vampire movies and things I like about them rather than try to do a list, because my lists change all the time. I'm just not good at lists. I just don't like them. I feel them very constrictive. Other people who do these videos are good at lists. I'm just not good at lists. I just don't like doing them. Like, I change the list like every day before you go into the video, so I end up doing like 10 lists. I just don't want to do that, so I'd rather just discuss certain films. There is one film that is, to me, is above everything else in the vampire genre. There will be one at the end. I'll say what's the one I like most. But beyond that, I'm just going to discuss general films, general vampire films. And so I'll be looking down, I've got my list here. So if you're quick enough, you'd have seen what was the top. But I'm going to try and go through them in not any order, and just try and keep it interesting and not trying to like go in any direction really. So I'm sure that'll make it fascinating because you're wondering when this video is going to end. But I'll do my best to keep it interesting. Okay, so I'll start with the ones that you might know more, which is like the Universal Dracula films. Then I'll go into the Hammer Draculas and the Hammer Vampire films. Right, there are like vampire films I like in the Universal series. I mean, I've got, sorry for this delay. I've got the Dracula set, which has lots of films. I think I did a video on the Dracula films years ago, the Dracula Universal films. So I'm not going to go too much detail with these ones because I've already covered them. But the one I'd have highest is the Spanish version of Dracula, which was the remake of the original Bela Lugosi Dracula, shot in the same sets, the same at night time, after the people had gone home during the day, and our director came and redid the scenes with Spanish speaking actors. This is far better than the Lugosi version. The only thing going against it is the lead actor is not as good as Lugosi. But everyone else is better, and it's a longer film and it goes into more detail about everything, all the details. And because it's a Spanish language and it's set in like basically, it feels like it's set in like in a Catholic country. So the threat of the vampire and the threat of something that's anti-Catholic feels much more like a assault on the society and the people, how they live their lives, than the version we get with Lugosi, which just is taking place in modern times of people going about their lives. So that whole idea about the cross and stuff didn't seem to have the same effect in Spanish Dracula. It's more psychological and it's more nuanced to people's beliefs at the time, especially in a Spanish speaking society. So that's what makes it much more, to me it feels much more, there's more stakes to it. There's more stakes to someone turning into a vampire with this film. So that's why I really enjoy it. There's also Dracula's Daughter, which has the lesbian subtext. The Dracula's daughter, also a vampire, is trying to cure herself of the curse. She drinks the blood of people, but she hates being a vampire. She has obvious lesbian urges, and she has a female victim, and it's really interesting. It's a lot more fun than the original Dracula as well. It's a sympathetic lead character. It plays up the idea of vampirism being a metaphor for sexuality of all kinds, and it's film that kind of kicks open the door of the vampire films towards other ways to tell the story rather than just this guy in a cloak. Even though it wasn't really followed upon for a while, it was kind of the first one to say, okay, we can have vampires of different sexual orientations, and it can develop in interesting ways. So it's really worth seeing. It's a bit blocky in some of its plot, but the good stuff's so good that it makes up for it. Then there's Son of Dracula. It's Robert Sudimak made it early on before he went on to the film noirs. It's really interesting. Lon Chaney Jr. was Dracula in this one. It's a weird mismatch of he's not real well cast, and there's lots of plot elements that aren't that great. But the atmosphere is so film noir, and there's a lot of lighting that become film noir. It's set in a lot of it's set in the swamp, and the lead actress character is obviously a femme fatale. So it's very dreamlike in a way, because there's like a dreamlike atmosphere mixed with film noir, with weird acting and a kind of perfunctory plot. But it gives it this dreamlike atmosphere that's really interesting. It's definitely worth seeing. There's something to it that's very unique and fascinating. So I'd definitely say see this one. It's very flawed, but it's a really interesting vampire movie. You know, and it's obviously the start of it's almost like American film going from the obvious horrors of Dracula to the horrors, the more urban horrors of film noir. This is like one of the films that's tipping over to from one to the other. You can see it happening in the film. There's a stretch between both sides of it. It's obviously where the genre is going to go is into film noir rather than into obvious vampire movies. So that's a terrific film to watch. It's very weird though, but it's short, so you can watch it in an hour and you'll have some fun with it. Yet you have to endure some boring scenes, but the good stuff's really good, so it's worth it. Next, I'm just going to go into some other gothic stuff. I mean, there's the Japanese versions, the Bloodthirsty trilogy, which I did a video on a few months ago. I recommend going to see that because it covers everything I would say. But Bloodthirsty trilogy is the Japanese version of the gothic horrors, and they do their own weird things with it. It's definitely worth seeing. It's fascinating to watch. I'd happily watch them many times. I'm not going to watch them again pretty soon. I really like those. Those are really good, really interesting. Then we've got the Hammer stuff. We'll go to Hammer stuff now. I've done a few Hammer films. I haven't done as many as I thought I'd be doing by now, but that's just because I'm slowly into it, I think. I get caught up in other type of films, I end up not doing as many as I thought. But the best one for me, the favourite Hammer vampire movie is Dracula Prince of Darkness. It's an obviously best of movie where everything comes together. The first Dracula I would also say, I'd also recommend any Terence Fisher vampire movies is always worth a look. But Dracula Prince of Darkness is where it all comes together. It's very streamlined. You know, people go to the castle by mistake because of bad weather. Dracula is reborn after one of them has been sacrificed. Dracula's back. He wants to kill the people who have survived, the travellers who survived, and he didn't get first. He wants to get, and that's it. It's very basic, but it's on widescreen. The atmosphere is wonderful. Dracula's barely says anything, but Christopher Lee's presence really delivers the evil. The supporting actors are all good fun. It goes along a great clip. It's got a terrific ending. There's a really good Van Helsing substitute in this priest who knows a lot about vampires. There's a mad guy in the monastery that's very much like one of the characters from the novel, Renfield. It's just wonderful. It's a beautiful film. If there's any Hammer film to see, I would recommend that one as a good way to start off, because you get an idea of what they're about with that one. Obviously Dracula itself is good. You've got it's got a really good leading lady in the original Dracula. Christopher Lee's in it. Peter Cushing's a terrific Van Helsing. It also goes a great clip. It's not quite as streamlined as Prince of Darkness, but it's still a really good film. It's also done 185, so visually it doesn't look quite as impressive as what would come after. But it's still a terrific film. You've got a great lead act, great Dracula, you've got great Van Helsing, the leading lady's terrific. Some of the support actors aren't as good, but the atmosphere is wonderful. It's a great little film. The other vampire films I'd say from Hammer that's worth seeing is Bride of Dracula, which is Terence Fisher made it between Dracula and Dracula Prince of Darkness because he didn't have Christopher Lee back. So it was a Van Helsing story, and it's basically a vampire story set in a girls' school, which doesn't sound promising, but you have a vampire who's out to get them, who's this spoiled brat who's just something off about him. He's got this weird relationship with his mother, and he's got a thing for the teacher who was travelling to the school in the first place, who accidentally let him free. And there's this weird, lot of psychology going on. There's this kind of fairy story aspect to it, and it just works. It's just one of those films that just works. It's a bit slow in places, but it builds and builds and builds and has a great ending. And it's just one of those films that's got this weird presence, this kind of... It's the first one that went from the fairy story elements of a vampire film that of course we were built upon later on in other vampire films. This was the first one to do it, and it's an underseen film, but it's really worth seeing. The final vampire film from Hammer that I would recommend. There's lots of other good Hammer films, and there's The Taste of Dracula and stuff like that. And there's some films that aren't as good that I like Scars of Dracula and Satanic Rites of Dracula. I can't recommend them as good films, I just enjoy them, and I've seen them way too many times. But the last really good one is Kiss of the Vampire. And this is made in the 1960s, and it's the one film I'm pretty sure Stanley Kubrick saw if you've seen Eyes Wide Shut, because there's a mass ball in it with vampires, and the atmosphere of it feels like Kubrick saw it when he was some point in his life. So when you see Eyes Wide Shut, you see this, definitely feels like you've seen this film, this one film. It's a wonderful atmosphere to it. You have this family of cousin vampires, and there's just a sense of evil to them and playfulness, and it's not a film I want to say much about. It's one of those films, try and see it for yourself, try and see it and not know much about it. I can see the Vampire Party because it comes early enough for it not to be a surprise, it's not going to be a massive spoiler, but it's just the atmosphere of this film, it's really worth seeing. It's available, you can catch it on Blu-ray now in a good quality copy, so I would definitely recommend it. We're off the Hammers. There's a Hammer parody called Fearless Vampire Killers, Roman Polanski. It's great atmosphere. It's not as funny as a comedy as you'd hope it would be, but it's a really good atmosphere. If you've been through the Hammers, I would definitely say watch this too. It's probably one of the least of the early Polanski films, but it's still really enjoyable. And the other one obviously would be Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is an OTT. I've done a video on this one. It's an OTT version of vampires. It's definitely worth seeing. It's a lot of fun. It's campy as hell. But go enjoy it. It's a good example of a director hammering it up like crazy. It's a really enjoyable film, and it definitely builds some of the kind of fantastical elements of like the fairy story elements of like Brides of Dracula and Kiss of the Vampire, and it goes on to this. Really, it feels like it's an extension of what Hammer were doing, which is funny because the film's always referenced. This film referenced the Lugosi version and seemed to look down in Hammer, but a lot of its influence seemed to come from the Hammer films. It's almost like it was hiding something. And came to say, oh, we're doing an expressionistic version. Yeah, there's some expressions in there, but there's also very Hammerish elements in Bram Stoker's Dracula too. So, one of the things I just realised I was going to say earlier, one of the things that Hammer had over Universal in the vampire thing, that they could have lots of eccentric supporting actors in it. They could have actors who were really weird, really strange, and who came to the country. I mean, Universal had to import weird actors like Ellen Thesiger in. That would cost money. Hammer could just phone up a local casting agent and ask for an eccentric actor. And they had a lot of actors that kept on reusing and reusing and reusing, and it was wonderful. It's just, and there's always eccentric actors in there, and you also see like staples of British TV like Peter Sallis in there, and all these other actors who play like respectable characters, and British TV suddenly turn up in a vampire movie or like basically in a Dracula movie. It's always good to see. It's always fun. Or actors who have really strange faces and really strange expressions turning up, all these Hammer movies, and then they keep turning up and turning up and turning up. Another vampire movie from Hammer what I would recommend is Captain Conan's Vampire Hunter. It was on another video I did. I mentioned it in case you never saw that video, but it's definitely worth seeing. It's another fairy story Hammer movie. It's really worth seeing. Okay, we're going off the Gothic now. I thought I'd try and cover all that in one glut. Like, this is the Gothic, this is the traditional ones you've seen. You've definitely probably have seen at least some of these. There's other Dracula movies that have been made, like the Frank Langella Dracula, and there's lots of films with Dracula in the title that have been made. But I wouldn't rate any of these ones. It's like, they're okay. But there's a good BBC Dracula with Louis Jordan in it that's really good, that's worth seeing. You buy it in DVD. It's very respectful to the source material. It really tries to be the source material. It really works really well, so I recommend that as well. But it's not a film. But if you're wanting a good Dracula, that's worth seeing. Right, so now we're going on to the more interesting ones. Obviously there's a Dracula adaptation I haven't done yet, but I'll get to it. But it's not the top choice. But I'm going to get to that when I get to the top choices. Right, next is we're going to go to the kind of realistic versions, like the idea of the vampires as a metaphor for life, and there's metaphor for stuff beyond just drinking blood and being in a white shirt, you know, who's doing all this vampire stuff and having the big fangs and stuff. Another example of that I haven't mentioned, Vampire Circus, is another good one. This is going to happen a lot. Oh, I forgot to mention that one. Just get used to it. I've seen way too many vampire movies, especially in the last week. The first point I would mention is something I only saw a few days ago, is Only Lovers Left Alive. Now, Jim Jarmusch film, it's instantly one of my favourite vampire films. It's so good. Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton are in it as the two vampires. They're married, they live apart, and it's just the whole idea of how do you live for centuries, how do you survive, and actually feel like a person, not this predator who's just sucking life out of people, even though that's what you really need to do to survive. So in this, these are vampires who have learned to just buy blood from blood banks and just use a good source. When they've been drinking the blood, little bits of blood in a small glass, it gives them this orgasm, this high. It's like a drug mixed with sexuality. It makes life worth living for them. But they're living in short supplies, and they're not killing people. They think that attacking people are barbaric. You don't do that. So the Tom Hiddleston character is a musician who's been writing all this music and letting other people take it as theirs, so it gets out to the world. But he gets money. He's got money from it probably. So he's got it seems to have an endless supply of money, and he's making music, and he's very tortured, and he's always wondering what's the point of being alive, because he's very tortured by existence. His wife, Tilda Swinton, has a much more curious view of life. She's much more curious about people, about music, about art. She's always reading stuff. When she goes somewhere, she's taking books with her, not clothes. She's more interested in books than she is in anything else, and learning stuff. There's Christopher Marlowe, played by John Hurt, who's thought dead but is not. He's living in Tangier. And there's all these characters who have survived in the edge of society. They don't want anyone to know vampires exist. They just want to survive. They don't want to kill people. They just want to get blood to the blood bank, live on, and just get left alone. They don't want anything else. Because obviously since they don't age, it becomes a problem if people see that they're ageless. Obviously they're going to get them killed. And from this thing, the story is basically Tilda Swinton going to see Tom Hiddleston because he's depressed, and trying to get him out of his depression because he's always needs to function every so often. Just get him out of the depression, pull him back out, pull him back to life. And within this time, her sister turns up, who's also a vampire, who's Mia Wachowski, and she's a wild child. She's always in trouble. She's always causing trouble, but she's the kind of person who forces them out of their rut and back into the real world and having to deal with real world problems. And it's just about existence, about living in an existence. The vampire is a metaphor for a long existence, and what do you do, and what do you make, how do you make meaning of your life. And it's the small things that create meaning within your life. But it's also the whole idea of how do you create meaning? Is it through like living with other people, being apart from other people, creating art, living for art, which Tilda Swinton character does. She doesn't create art, she lives for it. And it's all about how you just exist, really. Especially if you're so long to exist, and really. So it's a vampire film, but it's a really interesting one. So it's fascinating. So I would definitely recommend it. It's beautiful. It's only 2 hours long. It's a lot funnier than what I've suggested. It's got a sense of humour, but not an obvious sense of humour. It doesn't go for obvious jokes, it just has a sense of humour, but the situation, especially how bitchy Tom Hiddleston can be about the sister character. He really dislikes her and has some wonderful comments about her. It's hilarious. Okay, next is Daughters of Darkness. This is a film made in Harry Kumel in the 70s. It's one of the lesbian vampire films. It's this countess who travels through hotels, lives in hotels, and she doesn't stay for long, and every so often she'll go back to the same hotel, and once in a while someone who'll see her who saw her decades ago, and it's like, I saw that person and she's still the same age. It's that whole atmosphere of how he exists in this time, and she's got a female assistant who's also her lover, and she's trying to find a new lover. She's an eye on a married couple, and the husband's abusive to the wife, and she's got her eye on the wife being her new lover. And it's all about the weird sexual games going on between the couple and the vampire couple. It's just the atmosphere's beautiful, the situation's wonderfully perverse. It's just it's this fairy story feeling of the vampires, but it's also got this weird kinky sexuality going on. It's progressed a bit from Dracula's Daughter, where it's much more out in the open. They're lesbians. That's it. And it doesn't matter. It's just that's their take. That's their thing. There's no like stern judgment or anything. It's just that's what it is. Even for the 70s, and even now, they're getting to the point of, so what? Who cares? I mean, in the Dracula's Daughter had to die. In this one, it's not really. That's not really the point at all. It's just the existence. So as you can see in these films, the existence is the point of the films rather than the blood sucking. There's blood sucking just a small part of the film. It's the whole idea of the metaphor of the vampire being a trapped soul who's still stuck on Earth. Next we have a duo from Neil Jordan. We have Interview with Vampire and Byzantium. Now Byzantium I hadn't seen till yesterday. That was one of the films I was watching. It's wonderful, but I do like Interview with Vampire more. Interview with Vampire was the rare big budget vampire movie with a massive gay subtext that was so obvious, and they didn't seem to care that much behind it. And it's a terrific film. It's just so well done, but it is hard to sit through though. I mean, there's not much of a plot to it. I mean, it's basically one vampire turns another guy into a vampire. They act like a petty married couple for a while, while killing through the centuries. They bring another girl, they turn a little girl into a vampire at some point. She becomes a daughter, and that eventually causes the breakup of the central relationship, and one of the vampires to start travelling the world and finding out more about the vampires. That's all it is, and there's a depressive atmosphere to it. I mean, the whole idea of vampires, being a vampire is depressing. There's no joy, you can't see the sun will kill you. You have to hide out in the darkness all the time. You've got eternal life when you want it, but it might not be worth it. Most vampires will give it up after a certain point because it's not really worth it. And it's how do you make a life, being undead, being damned, and how it will drive you mad. And what's your response to that? So you have one character, Louis, played by Brad Pitt, whose response to it is depression. He's just depressed always, and he feels everything too much, and he's a central character, so it becomes a bit lugubrious at times. But you've also the Tom Cruise character Lestat, who's obviously feels lonely, but he learns to enjoy his life. He learns to be cruel, to be full of life, to be a great killer of people, and to treat them like cattle. And it's like, what side's the better? What one's the better? Because they are killers. I mean, Lewis kills rats and he lives and all that stuff for a certain time, and then they end up going back to humans. And when they have a daughter, Lestat teaches her how to kill humans, how to hunt. Now, what side's more moral? The side that's self-loathing, or the side that says this is our existence, this is what we are? So that's a thing that never gets resolved, because there's no way to really resolve it. It's like, what kind of evil is better, what kind of evil is worse? And they go through and see different types of vampires who are dealing with existence in different ways. So this is almost like a extension of, like an existential crisis throughout centuries. And it's wonderful, but it is just take patience. There's some great sequences in it, like there's always going to be spoilers here because it's been out for 20 odd years. But I mean the birth of the vampires as they see new life, and they're full of life, and then it gets dragged down to blood. That kind of switch of expecting something amazing, and then it gets, nope, you're getting just about blood. Which is wonderful, because it's a way to deflate the audience to the reality, and then you have to build an existence through that. There's also great bits when Claudia, played by Kirsten Dunst when she was still a kid, goes to war with Lestat, because it's almost like a war for the love of Louis, and it's pretty brutal, and it's almost like a domestic situation where she's slit his throat and set him on fire, and it's wonderful. It's just funny as hell in a very dark way. And there's also a great sequence at the end where Claudia dies when the sun comes through and burns her alive, and it's turned to dust. There's lots of wonderful stuff in it, but I know it's not for everybody. Byzantium, which I saw yesterday, it takes place, has a similar mood. It's more fantastical, it's more of a fairy story than Into the Vampire. The vampires can live in the day in this one, and it's a mother and daughter. Basically a mother who has to always make money to survive for her daughter who's 16, who's always 16, and her mother was always a prostitute and remains a prostitute, and they're trapped in this life. Even though they can live forever, they're still trapped in the same doomed life, and they're under threat from other vampires who are these like sexist brotherhood who thinks that no one can be born of a woman, no vampire can be born of a woman, a vampire is always a man, and any type of woman gives a gift to another person, they have to die. So this couple this mother and daughter are always getting chased around. And Slaughter did a video on it. I recommend going to see his for a full rundown of the film. It's really good. I don't want to go through it all, but it's a wonderful thing. I mean, how the vampires are turned is terrific. The performances are terrific. There's a great, really cool atmosphere to it. It's just wonderful. There's just Neil Jordan's good with gothic and gothic emotions, and it's all about the emotions. Again, it's about how to survive as a killer, and how do you do it, and do you kill or do you find other ways around it, and it's just how you live in life, how do you exist in life. So again, this is what the vampires can do, the whole metaphor for a vampire can do. Another one on this subject is the addiction. The addiction is Abel Ferrara film, another film I've just saw yesterday. It's wonderful, it's set in black and white, it's 80 minutes long. I think Sodron also mentioned this one in his video, but I've had addiction for ages, I still have never watched it until yesterday. I finally went to it, it was really worth it. It was really worth waiting to see in a good copy print, because I used to have a DVD, it was very good, so I always wanted to wait till I got a good copy of it. which is why I hadn't seen it before. So I finally got to see a good copy, and it's wonderful. Again, this whole idea of people as a killer, vampires being an addiction, being a killer. Are you addicted to evil, or what you're addicted to? And it's a metaphor for addiction to drugs, or addiction to bad behaviour, or any kind of addiction that destroys your soul. And how do you survive? Do you become a monster who's predatory? Do you become a... Do you try and resist the urge the way Christopher Walken's vampire does? He resists the urge. But he's like a junkie who's always waiting for the fix though. He's just telling himself he's resisting. Or do you just disavow everything and allow yourself to die, basically? It's that kind of thing of the painful side of addiction, the painful side of the dark side of humanity. Like, how do you get out of it? Is faith good enough? Is remorse good enough? And how do you spread this to other people? How do you spread the addiction to drugs or violence? How it spreads from one person to the other? So all these civilised, seeming people slowly become addicted to the same thing as the lead character played by Lily Taylor, who's terrific in the film. And you get to see all these archetypes who think they're civilised slowly become addicted and uncivilised. And so it's a great joke about academia and pretensions of people in academia, how predatory they actually are. So there's lots of great stuff going on there. It's been a great time in the 90s when Able Forever was really hot, and all his films seemed to have 5 ideas rather than just one. He was always struggling with lots of ideas at the same time, and his films were full of ideas and full of emotions bashing against each other, trying to find some solution to an anxious existence. And this is still around that peak period where he was working a lot with Christopher Walken. And this was made just before The Funeral, just after Body Snatchers and King of New York. So this was at the peak Able Forever. It's a wonderful film. It's definitely worth seeing. It's really good. And hopefully I did justice in my description. But it's great. Another one I'm trying to... is Martin. Martin is George Romero's film. It's wonderful. It's about a guy who thinks he's a vampire, but maybe he's just a psychopath who's been infected with old world ideas, old traditional ideas, and it's all a metaphor for the bad ideas that are sent down from generation to generation, how they affect the youth and create neuroses within the youth that might lead to violence and lead to explosion of violence. Even if they're not actually true, they might just be madness, but it's how madness affects people. But it also could be he's a vampire. It's ambiguous what it is. But it's one of those films it's best to see it yourself, even knowing that little about it. You find out in the first 5 minutes is how it's told throughout the film is what's important. So I definitely recommend seeing Martin, but try and not read up about it too much, just try and see it. Second Sight's doing a Blu-ray release pretty soon of it, so try and get it there. Alright, next one is Let the Right One In. This is I guess a Swedish film to the guy who did Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy later. It's a vampire movie about a little boy who's getting bullied at school and a vampire protects him, and they create this bond. It's this dark film. Again, it's not a fairy story-based film, but it's got teeth. It pretty much shows how violent and monstrous the vampire is. It's a little girl who's a vampire, and she hasn't aged for years. And it never cuts away from the fact that she's a monster. And the town the little boy's living in is also monstrous with bullies and neglect, and the whole town's neglected. I mean, that's the thing. Addiction was the same with the whole town feel neglected, the whole world feel neglected. But the Right One In is the same as Only Lovers Left Alive for that reason as well, where you see the cities crumbling, the world crumbling into the depression of vampires. You see society falling away. And you see it in this too, and just this whole idea of this vampire living in this crumbling place that probably was maybe once great but is no more. And it's just tragic how the world has just fallen away. It's just a terrific film, very brutal but beautiful as well, so I would definitely highly recommend it. But again, I'm not saying much about it because it's beyond some of the themes of it. Like, it's about a boy trying to find his place, but he might be trying to find his place in the wrong, in somewhere that was going to lead to a tragic end, or an end that's less obviously tragic you'd think, but it's still not great. So there's all that kind of feeling there, like this could end badly and life can end badly. In some ways this is one of the darker of the vampire films because there's not much hope in the end of it. It just doesn't feel hopeful at all. Even though the ending's not brutally bleak or anything, it still feels like, if you think about it for 2 minutes, it's pretty depressing. Well, more depressing than most of the other films on the list. Some of the other films on the list have some grace points at the end. This one doesn't seem to have that. At least to me, it doesn't have that. Next is, sorry I'm looking down at this thing, I just try to remember everything so I'm not missing anything out. Near Dark, Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark. This is a film get totally fucked over by the Lost Boys. Lost Boys came out, was a hit, this one get ignored. And Lost Boys is garbage, so it's not on my list in any possible way. Near Dark's wonderful. Bill Paxton, Lance Henriksen. It's a cowboy film, but it's also a vampire film. It's about a guy who falls in love with a woman who turns out to be a vampire, and she's a clan of vampires that travel the country, and but they're now in the Midwest and they're trying to survive, and they get burned by the sun, so they can only survive for so long. So they have to always have a new hiding place every day, and it's just a violent cowboy vampire movie. I mean, there's grace notes in the romance, but it always reminds you how brutal these vampires are. These vampires are the real deal. They're unsentimental. They're killers. They do not care who they kill. They just want the blood. They see you as cattle. That's it. If you're in their way, they will brutalise you and your family just to make a point, not to mess with them. It's a brutal film. It's early Catherine Bigelow, really beautifully done. It's got a great cowboy aesthetic, but it's also got a sense of humour, a sense of place. It's like, it's kind of film noir as well as western. It's like a film noir and westerns are mixed together and crashed together in a way that's more satisfying here than the film noir and vampire tale and Son of Dracula. This one gets more bad in the western motif into it as well. It seems to complete this whole thing of noir vampires. Having the western thing just kind of gives it the kick it needs. So you still have light floating through windows and things, but it's now more threatening, and it's a resonance of a world that's slowly getting left behind. It's a beautiful film. It's really wonderful. I really need to watch it again. But I'm waiting a good Blu-ray to come out of it. You know, because there's a Blu-ray apparently it's not very good. I really want a good release of it. Finally, of this kind of period, before I get to the top ones, there's Kronos. Guillermo del Toro's Kronos. This is a beautiful film. It's a vampire film, but it feels influenced by myth and literature of vampires more than other movies. The whole idea of this object, the Kronos device, that when it's connected to you, infects you and turns you into the undead, makes you want blood, and this, for a while you feel as if you're getting better, you're getting healthier, because this old guy is infected with it and he thinks he's getting better, and then it slowly realises he's getting younger, but he's becoming a threat to everybody, he's becoming a monster. So you're taking someone who's a loving figure who suddenly becomes a threat to his family, and he's got a relationship with his family or his grandchild who he starts to feel he's becoming a threat to, and it's how to survive that. As well as that, there's industrialists who try to hold the Kronos device so this guy who's dying can live forever. So you've got these story threads coming together to this violent, dark, poetic, fairy story-ish vampire film, but also feels more literate than most vampire films. It feels like it's based on like Mexican vampires and Mexican myth rather than Hollywood myth. It feels legitimately a Mexican movie. It's set in Mexico. It feels a lot of the conventions of Mexico float through and create another feel that's just distinctly different from what you get in the rest of the world. I mean, this was del Toro's first film, then he moved on to like some mainstream films and some like arty films like Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth, were also ideas of myth set in with the Spanish language and a world that's not explored very often in cinema. So it's a beautiful film. I have mangled explanation a little bit, but what can you do? I've been doing these videos for a bit now, so it's like sometimes you find yourself just rambling. Okay, we're now into the last few. These two are the runners up, and that's Nosferatu and Herzog's Nosferatu. So the Murnau and Herzog Nosferatu, the runners up. I love both of them. One of them is more like a. I mean, the Murnau one's hard to explain. I mean, it's set in the real world, but it's obviously mythical. It's a vampire, and it's dreamlike, and it's got a lot of wonderful things going on in it. The Herzog one is much more rat-like and much more set in the real world, and it's got a sense of like it's more focused on the idea of the plague and the rotting of society and the Renaissance, death. It's more of locked into the real world and the whole idea of the physical world. The vampire comes from the physical world and the physical infections and affecting the world and creating this atmosphere of dread that the vampire brings with him, the plague and the things that affect Europe anyway, or disease and all of this. So it's very effective and nasty. And Nosferatu is the one of the ones is beautiful. It's just a beautiful ending, beautifully made. It's just a wonderful film, but it's hard to talk about. It's just wonderful. Just go see it. So I'm not going to say much about that one. It's just like go see Nosferatu and go see Herzog Nosferatu. They're both wonderful. They're both amazing. Just go see them. That's it. If you haven't seen them, you're in for a treat. Sorry about that. My battery ran out. That's why I was looking at this a little bit. I was talking. So yes, Nosferatu, beautiful, just beautiful. But yeah, the original has this weird atmosphere that it's so hard to explain now. Like I've been dying to do videos on them. I'm trying to rewatch them a bit more and try and find a way to explain what's so good about them, because it's so in the filmmaking that it's hard to explain. Like it just sounds like cliches when you explain how good he is, because there is this dreamlike feel to it, but it's naturalistic as well. It's very classical. It's based on Dracula, but everything's pared down to the essence. It's romantic, but it's dark. He is like a phantom, and he's just this. It's a perfect vampire movie, but it's hard to explain why it's a perfect vampire movie. It just is. That's all it is. It just is perfect. But no, it's not the perfect vampire movie for me. The perfect vampire movie is called Vampire. Greatest Vampire. That's the one is my favourite. I think by this point you probably realised that once Nosferatu wasn't. It's the one to me is the most mysterious. I know some of these films more than I know this film, but I've seen it a few times. I think it's wonderful, but I don't want to watch it too often and discover its mysteries too much. I want to save or watch it again and again. And it's my favourite. It just there's the dreamlike feel of it, the nightmarish elements to it. It's not a linear story. It is like someone dreaming, and there's no idea what appointment becomes a vampire, and it's just it brings the vampire into the myth of Europe in a way that's different from the rest, where the vampire becomes front and centre, because the vampires are always attention-grabbing creatures. And this one is less so, and I think it puts it in its place a bit more, and it makes it more perfect. The vampire's part of the myth, along with ghosts and phantoms. It's part of the problem. That's one of the reasons I like Nosferatu as well. It's part of the world. It's not the whole thing. It's not grabby of your attention for every little detail. It's part of something, and the myth's greater beyond the vampire. And that I like more. That's my favourite thing. That's one of the things I like the early Vampire Hammer ones, is like you don't see him that much. He appears and then he disappears and he appears and disappears. But he's always important, but he's not always there. But that's even better. This is like, the vampire itself is not that important, but it's important. It's just, for the context of the film, it's just perfectly placed. No film's perfectly played. It's beautiful. So if you haven't seen Vampire, I'd recommend seeing it. If you live in Britain, Eureka's got a DVD version. America, the Criterion's got a Blu-ray, if you're a multi-region player. I've only got the DVD so far, but I'm going to get the Blu-ray at some point. But you get commentaries and things on the DVD. It's a cinema one, it's really good. But it's a beautiful film. It's definitely worth, it's so worth seeing. Rush it and get it if you haven't. But I hope you enjoyed that, my vampire list. Hope I didn't drag on too long. I could talk about this all day. I could go into even more details about other weird films like the Count Yorga series. You know, they are lots of fun. The Blackula films, they are lots of fun. There's lots of other ones that are worth seeing. But I just try to concentrate on the ones I really loved, which is some of the traditional ones, like the gothic ones, like the Universal and Hammer. Some of the outposts of them, and then the depressing ones, and then the fantastical ones. Those are my favourite vampires. So I just concentrate on them. So hopefully this is better than a top 10, because I think a top 10 would have been limited anyway for me.